Good afternoon. It's about 4 o'clock on Sunday, March 17th, 2024. I finished a series of videos, 1871 to 2023, 152 of them. Best baseball player each year. This video will be a recap. What do I mean? I want to list each individual year who was the best baseball player between 1871 and 2023. You're thinking it's going to take too long. No. See this book? Baseball, best hitters and pitchers, exceptional players, 1871-2023. I did the research. I wrote a book. It's on Amazon. And I have each individual player who was the best baseball player that year between those years, 152 years. Now, in my epilogue, I list it all. So it'll be easy just to name all these players. Now, you're saying, is it 152 players? No. It's 152 years, but there are certain players that have multiple wins as far as best baseball player for the year. I'm going to list them all and how many times they did it, okay? I'm not going to say the years. That would take too long. But I will say the player and how many times they were the best baseball player. Fair enough? Babe Ruth leads 10 times best baseball player. Between 1919 and 1931, he did it 10 times, leading the American and National League, combining it. He has the most wins, 10 times best baseball player. Ty Cobb, 6 times. Ted Williams, 6 times. Stan Musial, 5 times. Barry Bonds, 5 times. Jimmy Fox, Henry Aaron, Dan Brothers, and Tony Gwynn, and Ross Barnes 4 times. Then the rest of these guys 3 times. Ed Delante, Nap Lajoie, Wade Boggs, Ichiro Suzuki, Albert Pujols, and Miguel Cabrera. 3 times best baseball player. If you want to know the years, you can either go to my YouTube channel, Ken Arzone Talks Baseball. Ken Arzone, Ardizzone, Talks Baseball. Put it on YouTube. You'll see it. And if you go to my videos, you'll see each individual year from 1871 to 2023, and I list the player's name. But for this recap video, I'm telling you which players won and how many times. 2 times. So a lot of guys did it 2 times. I'll just list them all. Cal McVeigh, Paul Hines, Roger Connor, Billy Hamilton, Jesse Burkett, Sam Thompson, Willie Keeler, Honus Wagner, Roger Hornsby, Lou Gehrig, Hank Greenberg, Ralph Kiner, Willie Mays, Frank Robinson, Billy Williams, Rod Carew, Pete Rose, Fred Lynn, Mike Schmidt, Jim Rice, Cecil Fielder, Frank Thomas, Mark McGuire, and Jose Bautista. All did it 2 times, best player. And then the rest of the guys, 1 time. I'll say their name. It's a lot of names. Levi Miro, Deacon White, Charlie Jones, George Gore, Abner, Daryl Pimple, Cap Hansen, Fred Dunlap, Dave Orr, King Kelly, Tip O'Neill, Jimmy Ryan, Hardy Richardson, Tom Brown, Hugh Duffy, Ginger Beaumont, Buck Freeman, Cy Seymour, George Stone, Gavy Kravis, Benny Koff, Tris Speaker, George Burns, Lefty O'Doul, Bill Terry, Chuck Klein, Joe DiMaggio, 1 time. Snuffy Sternweiss, Tommy Holmes, Johnny Mize, George Kell, Eddie Stanky, Duke Snyder, Ted Klukowski, Mickey Mantle one time, Richie Hashburn, Dick Groys, Roger Maris, Tommy Davis, Tony Oliva, Dick Allen, Carl Yastrzemski, Lou Brock, Frank Howard, Matthew Alou, Joe Torre, Willie Stargell, Joe Morgan, Dave Cash, Greg Luzinski, Keith Hernandez, Don Baylor, George Brett, Willie Wilson, Robin Yount, Cal Ripken, Tom Mattingly, Kevin Mitchell, Paul Molitor, Jeff Bagwell, Albert Bell, Larry Walker, Todd Helton, Derek Lee, Ryan Howard, Alex Rodriguez, Josh Hamilton, Matt Carpenter, Chris Davis, Jose Altuve, Dee Gordon, Mike Trout, Charlie Blackmon, Mookie Betts, Whit Merrifield, Freddie Freeman, Juan Soto, Jose Abreu, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Aaron Judge, and Ron O'Connor. I just listed every single player who accomplished the feat of being the best baseball player in an individual year. Starting with Babe Ruth, who did it 10 times. I went all through the players and how many times they did it. And the last group I just mentioned just did it once. Ruth 10 times, Cobb 6, Williams 6, Musial 5, Barry Bonds 5. And then Jimmy Fox, Henry Aaron, Dan Brothers, Tony Gwynn, Ross Barnes 4. Ed Delonte, Nap Lajoie, Wade Boggs, Ichiro Suzuki, Albert Pujols, and Miguel Cabrera 3. And then I list all the guys that did it 2 times, and then the rest of the guys did it once. What do you think? I looked at their stats. I looked at the categories. What categories did I look at? I looked at batting average, hits, home runs, triples, doubles, singles, runs batted in, runs scored, slugging, on base, base on balls, stolen bases, and total bases. I looked at the year. I looked to see who led in the category, and I combined the National American Leagues. For example, I'll give you an example. 1920 season, Babe Ruth won 6 categories. And then in 1921, he won 7 of them. 1923, he won another 7. So when I did all the combination of those categories, batting average, hits, home runs, triples, doubles, singles, runs batted in, runs scored, slugging, on base, base on balls, stolen bases, and total bases. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 categories. If a player won the most categories, I gave him Best Baseball Player of the Year. And I combined both leagues. So when Babe Ruth in 1920 won 7 out of the 13, he was the best baseballer. See, that's how I did it. And then some of the other guys, they had like 6 categories, 5, 4. There were a couple guys that had 3. And then some years, some players tied with 2 categories each. So I gave it to them. And that's why a lot of these players just have 1 win. It's in my book, Baseball Best Hitters and Pitchers. And this video is just recapping. Interesting list, don't you think? There's a lot of guys on here that are not in the Hall of Fame. I mean, Barry Bonds, 5 times. Let's see, Ross Barnes. He was back in the old school time. He won 1870s, way back. Got other guys, Cal McVeigh, not in the Hall of Fame. Paul Hines. A lot of the other guys, though, are in the Hall of Fame who won it. See, I'm looking at some of the other. Cecil Fielder's not in the Hall of Fame. He won twice. Jose Bautista twice. Levi Merrill, he was in the 1870s. You got Charlie Jones, George Gore, Abner, Darrell Pinkel, Fred Dunlap, Dave Orr, he won. Tip O'Neill, not in the Hall. Jimmy Ryan, Hardy Richardson, Tom Brown, Ginger Beaumont. Some of these old school guys, they won the individual year. Interesting that Joe DiMaggio only won one time, 1937. He had to compete against Ted Williams and some of those other guys. They only had one win. He had like 3 or 4 years in the military. Johnny Mize one time. George Kelly's in the Hall of Fame just one time. And then if you go through the list of guys who won it once, a lot of them are still playing. You know, like Mike Trout won once. He's still playing. Juan Soto's playing. Freddie Freeman's playing. Vlad Guerrero Jr., Aaron Judge, Ron Acuna. These guys are still playing. They have one win. They win in the 2020s, the 2000s. The title of the book, Best Hitters and Pitchers. Since I finished the batters, my next series of videos is going to be from 1871 to 2023, Best Pitchers of the Year. And that's going to be 152 more videos. Can I do it? I think I can. If you just take a video per day or every other day. And in this book, I list them all. And in my epilogue, I list who did it the most. I'll give you a clue. You want a clue now or you want to wait? Why not give you the clue just to kind of whet your appetite? Warren Spahn, among pitchers, had the most times best pitcher in an individual year. Did you know that? Warren Spahn. 6 times. Pete Alexander, 5 times. And then I go through the list. So a lot of pitchers just had one time. But there are other pitchers that have multiples. A lot of 4s, 4 times, 3 times, and 2 times. You're wondering about Sandy Koufax, right? He did it 3 times. Ed Walsh, 4 times. Dizzy Dean, 4 times. Bob Feller, 4. Robin Roberts, 4. Roger Clemens, 4. Randy Johnson, 4. Justin Verlander, 4. And he's still pitching. So I go through that. So I'm going to do each individual year starting with the pitchers. That's going to be a lot of fun. All right, this video was recapping all the batters. What do you think? Best player for the individual year. And the way I determined it was by looking at 13 offensive categories and see who won the most categories in that particular year. I gave him the best baseball player that year. And can we all agree that the Bambino, Babe Ruth, just outperformed and outplayed everybody in the baseball era that he played in? From 1919 to 1931, he has 10 wins. And he did a lot of back-to-back. Look at, he won 1919, 1920, and 1921. That's 3 in a row. He didn't win 22 because he didn't play the whole full season. Roger Hornsby won that year. But he comes back and wins 23 and 24, 1924. So that's 5 times right there. 1925, he didn't win. Again, Roger Hornsby won that year. Why? The Babe didn't play a full season. But he comes back and he wins 1926, 27, and 28. That's 3 in a row. So that's 8. He didn't win 1929. I'm looking to see who. It was some guy won 1929. I got it here. I think I have it. Yeah. Lefty O'Doul won 1929. But then the Bambino comes back and wins 1930 and 1931 to give him 10 times best baseball player. See, I add up the categories in that year. 10 times. Nobody else came close. Ty Cobb had 6, and so did Ty Williams. Ted Williams. Ty Williams. Should be Ted Williams. Ty Cobb, 6 times. Ted Williams, 6 times. Interesting with Cobb. He's just a base hit hitter, right? He's not home runs, not slugging. But he compiled doubles and triples and singles and on base and stolen bases, so he would win categories. He won 1907, 1909. Then he won 1911 and 12. Won 1915 and 1917, 6 times. And you know, Ted Williams, he has 6 times. He won 1941 and 42. Then he goes into the military service, comes back and wins 1946, wins 1949, 1954, and then he wins 1957. Toward the end of his career, he wins it 6 times. Stan Musial, 5. Barry Bonds, 5 times. He dominated when he played. Jimmy Fox, Henry Aaron, 755 home runs, right? He has 4 wins. Tony Gwynn has 4. Of course, he was winning 8 batting titles, so he would win the categories, mainly in hitting and in singles and doubles 4 times. Some of the other guys 3 times, and then a lot of guys 2 times, and then the rest of the guys just 1 time. It's all in this book. Best baseball players and hitters from 1871, 2023. I think that does it. What do you think? 152 videos. It was fun doing the research. You go to Baseball Reference, you look at the individual year, and then you look at all the categories, and you count up how many times the player led in that category. The Bambino and Ty Cobb, Ted Williams. Those are the 3 greatest, you got to say, the greatest baseball players of all time, wouldn't you say? And then Lou Gehrig, he had to compete with the Babe because he came in 1925, and the Babe is winning 1926, 27, 28, 30, and 31. So Gehrig, he started winning in the 30s, but then he had to compete against Jimmy Fox in the 1930s. See, Jimmy Fox won 1932, 33, 38, and 39, where Lou Gehrig, he just has 2 wins, 1934 and 1936. I consider Lou Gehrig in the top 5 greatest baseball players of all time. Same with Willie Mays. He only has 2 wins. Yet Aaron had more than Mays as far as best baseball player. But again, Mays is competing against the likes of Aaron, Clemente, Mantle. Musial was in there in the 1950s. See, so it depends on who you're competing against. Who was Babe Ruth competing against? Well, it doesn't matter. He was competing against Lou Gehrig later in the 20s. But he competed against Roger Hornsby, who has a .358 career batting average. He also competed against Ty Cobb because Cobb played from 1920 through 1928, so he has the 8-year period there, but Babe beat him during that time. Cobb won before that. See, Cobb won 1907, and then he goes through 1917 and gets 6 times he wins it, where the Bambino starts in the 1920s and he dominates that decade. So who else is the Babe competing against in that decade? Well, you got good players playing, right? Hornsby. And some of the other Hall of Famers during that decade. Lou Gehrig is in that decade, at least 5 years, but the Babe beat him. You would say that the likes of Mays and Mantle and Clemente and Aaron, maybe they had more competition than Babe Ruth. But that just shows you, if you think about baseball history and you think of the players that competed against each other in the eras, I don't buy the argument that some eras were easier than others. I think each era of baseball had its challenges, and I think they had quality players. They had guys 6 feet 220, or 6 feet 220, playing baseball. That's what Babe Ruth was. He was 6'2", 6'3", whatever, 215, right? You had other guys the same height and weight as him. Why didn't they hit 714 homers? Because the Babe had more talent. But you had guys who were pretty good players. I call it the old school era from 1870 through 1950. I consider old school. And there were good players. And a lot of them made the Baseball Hall of Fame. And there were good pitchers. Ed Walsh, Walter Johnson was pitching. Cy Young was pitching. You got really quality guys. You had Lefty Grove pitching, Carl Hubble. So I don't think eras matter. I think it's the talent of the player. And for some reason, Babe Ruth had the stroke. He had the talent. He had the eyesight. And he just outperformed and outplayed everybody. Same with Ty Cobb. Quality hitter. How come there are a lot of players who are able to hit the baseball? Why was Cobb better than all of them? Because of it's just the talent. The eye coordination, probably the perseverance of his work ethic that got him through all those batting titles, 12 titles. There are other batters. Tris Speaker was playing. Roger Hornsby's playing. Why was he better than the others? Why did he get 4,189 hits and other players just about 2,500 hits? They can hit. So, and then if you look at that's the old school era, 1871 to 1950. From 1951 through 2023, I consider that the new school baseball. And you had Stan Musial playing in the 50s. Ted Williams finished his career toward the end of the 50s. But then you get Mays and Mantle. You get Clemente. You get Ernie Banks. Richie Ashburn. These guys are coming up. They're playing in that era. And they had to compete against the pitchers of that era. Was it harder in the new school versus old school? You know what? I wrote a book, Old School versus New School Era, and I compared the production of each era. I did the runs scored, RBIs, hitting, batting averages in the old school, and I compared all that with the new school era. Old school dominated. They had more 300 career batting average hitters. They had more Hall of Famers. They had more people with I would say, runs scored. I believe the RBI production was better, and the batting averages were much better in the old school era versus the new school. You're saying maybe because of the pitching in the new school is tougher? I don't know. Old school, they were pitching hard too. Cy Young, Walter Johnson, Lefty Grove, Carl Hubble. You like to face those guys? Bob Feller? New school, I think the new school had the advantage of the technology. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, they had plane travel in the new school era, and they can get to the cities a little quicker, and they can get to the hotels and rest up for the games, where the old school players had to travel by either bus, car, and they were the old cars of the 20s, the cars of the 30s and 40s and 50s. Those are old jalopy cars. Or they took the train travel to get from, you had to go from Cleveland to Washington, D.C., to Baltimore, and then you had to go down to St. Louis, and you had to go to Boston. You had to go to New York. They had train travel. A lot of times it was overnight. Imagine traveling overnight. You got a game the next day. Their games started in the afternoon. They played day baseball mainly back then. Where in the new school area, you're playing night baseball. So you can rest all day. Get to the park, get your batting practice in. I think the old school was tougher, yet they had better production. I did that. I did all the research in my book, Old School versus New School Baseball. I proved it with all the facts and stats. You may disagree with me. You may say new school era is harder because of the pitchers are throwing harder. They threw hard back then too. There was a lot of strikeouts back then. But those players, they were gritty and they played 150 games. New school era, you got a lot of guys only playing 100 games, 120 games a year. Very few are playing 162. I can go on and on and on comparing those eras. I did a series of videos on that, old school versus new school. If you look at my YouTube channel, a lot of videos proving the facts. All right, I think I'm done here. Opining. A lot of fun, a lot of research, baseball, great game, isn't it? I like the stats. It's interesting to look at all the baseball accomplishments, all the players, what they did, how they produced, and their career production. All right, my next series of videos will be on the best pitchers from 1871 to 2023. We'll do each individual year. Talk to you later. I'm out.